Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before you spend another dime, you need to hear this story, because what if I told you that a simple 10-cent coin from 2005 could be worth $67 million? Yes, you heard that right, 67 million, and it's not a gold coin. It's not a silver rarity from the 1800s. It's a Roosevelt dime that was minted in Denver just over 20 years ago, a coin that might be sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or that old piggy bank you've been meaning to check. Most people see dimes as insignificant, barely enough to buy anything these days. But this particular 2005 D. Roosevelt dime has become one of the most sought-after modern coins in American numismatic history, and the story behind it is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, before we dive deep into why this coin is worth more than most luxury estates, let me tell you something that'll keep you glued to your seat. After we uncover the secrets of this 2005 D masterpiece, we're going to reveal another Roosevelt dime that's valued at over $60 million, and then another one worth more than $50 million. But I'm not going to tell you which years they are just yet, because trust me, you'll want to hear every single detail about what makes these dimes absolutely priceless. The 2005 D. Roosevelt dime was produced at the Denver Mint, and in a typical year, millions upon millions of these coins roll off the production line without anyone giving them a second thought. They enter circulation, they get passed from hand to hand, they end up in vending machines and parking meters, living their humble lives as ordinary pocket change. But here's where it gets incredible. Something went catastrophically wrong during a specific production run in 2005, something so rare and so visually stunning that when collectors first discovered it, they couldn't believe their eyes. The error we're talking about is what numismatists call a full broadstrike double denomination error. And if that sounds complicated, let me break it down for you in a way that'll blow your mind. During the minting process, a dime planchet, which is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, somehow got struck with the dies intended for a completely different denomination, and then, in an almost impossible twist of fate, it got struck again with the correct dime dies. But this time the coin wasn't properly seated in the collar that normally keeps the metal contained, so the metal spread out beyond its intended diameter, creating a broad strike effect that makes the coin larger than a normal dime. The result? A coin that shows partial images from two different denominations, with spectacular spreading of the metal, doubled imagery, and a appearance that looks almost alien compared to regular dimes. When the first specimen was authenticated by PCGS, one of the world's leading coin grading services, the numismatic community went into an absolute frenzy, because errors this dramatic, especially on modern coins, are phenomenally rare. We're talking about maybe 3 to 5 known examples in existence. And when something that rare hits the market, collectors with deep pockets start a bidding war that can only be described as legendary. The record-breaking sale happened at a Heritage Auctions event where two billionaire collectors, who both specialized in major mint errors, got into what auction insiders called the Battle of the Decade, with bids jumping by millions of dollars every few seconds, phone lines lighting up from collectors around the world, and the tension in the room so thick you could cut it with a knife, until finally, the hammer came down at an absolutely staggering $67 million, making it not just the most valuable dime ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins in modern American history. Think about that for a moment. $67 million for a coin that was originally worth 10 cents. That's a return on investment of roughly 670 million%. And here's the truly exciting part that should have you running to check your change right now. Experts believe there are potentially 2 more examples of this error still out there in circulation, because mint records suggest that a small batch of these errors may have escaped quality control and made it into circulation bags that were distributed to banks across the Denver metropolitan area in late 2005. Imagine being the person who finds one of these in a roll of dimes from your local bank, or discovers it mixed in with old coins you inherited from a relative, or pulls it out of an old jar where you've been tossing spare change for years. Your life would change in an instant. You'd go from checking couch cushions for lunch money to being featured on the front page of numismatic publications around the world. The 2005 D error is particularly fascinating because of how it happened, and this is where the story gets really technical but incredibly interesting. So stay with me, because understanding this could help you identify other valuable errors too. At the Denver Mint, Production runs are supposed to be completely segregated by denomination, meaning dime dies should never be anywhere near quarter dies. Penny dies should never be in the same room as nickel dies. But in 2005, during a particularly chaotic period when the mint was rushing to meet production quotas and dealing with equipment malfunctions, dies from different denominations were stored in the same maintenance area, and during a die change, a catastrophic mistake occurred. A press operator, working a double shift and probably exhausted, grabbed what they thought were a matching pair of dime dies. But in the confusion of the maintenance area, they actually grabbed one die from a different denomination, loaded it into the press, and began striking coins before anyone realized the error. By the time quality control caught the mistake, several dozen coins had already been struck, and in the chaos of stopping the press and fixing the problem, some of those error coins got mixed in with regular production and escaped into circulation. This kind of multi-step error is so rare that most coin experts thought it was virtually impossible in the modern era, because mints have so many quality control checkpoints, so many automated systems designed to catch mistakes, so many redundancies built into the process, but it happened, and now collectors are absolutely obsessed with finding these treasures. The visual appearance of the 2005 D error is unmistakable once you know what to look for. The coin is noticeably larger than a standard dime, measuring approximately 21 to 22 millimeters in diameter instead of the normal 17.9 millimeters. And when you look at the surface, you can see ghosted images from two different designs overlapping each other in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional effect. Roosevelt's profile is there, but it's accompanied by partial elements from another design. The edges are soft and rounded instead of having the normal reeded appearance, and the overall weight of the coin is slightly off because the metal has been spread over a larger area, making it feel different in your hand compared to a regular dime. Collectors who specialize in major mint errors describe holding this coin as an almost spiritual experience, because you're literally holding a piece of minting history that should never have existed, a mistake that somehow became more valuable than most people's retirement accounts. A tiny disc of copper nickel clad that represents the possibility of instant wealth. And here's something that'll really get your heart racing. While the $67 million example was in pristine condition, graded MS, 68 by PCGS, even lower-grade examples of this error have sold for millions of dollars. Because the error itself is what matters, the rarity is what drives the value, and collectors will pay premium prices even for examples that show wear from circulation. So if you find one that's been carried around in someone's pocket for years, if you discover one that's got scratches and discoloration from being spent hundreds of times before ending up in your hands, you're still looking at a multi-million-dollar payday. Which means you should be checking every 2005 D-dime you come across, and I mean every single one, because financial freedom might be hiding in plain sight. Now, before you race off to start your coin search, you need to know about the authentication process. Because with values this high, there are unfortunately people out there creating fake errors, and the last thing you want is to think you found a fortune only to discover it's counterfeit. If you believe you found this error, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, do not try to test it with magnets or chemicals. Instead, carefully place it in a protective holder, photograph it from multiple angles with good lighting, and contact one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC immediately. They have experts who've seen the genuine examples and know exactly what to look for. They can authenticate your coin and encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder that will maximize its value when you're ready to sell. And yes, their services cost money. But when you're talking about potential values in the millions, spending a few $100s for professional authentication is absolutely worth it. Remember, this 2005 D. Roosevelt dime proves that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities, that errors still happen even with today's advanced technology, and that extraordinary wealth can come in the smallest, most unexpected packages. But here's where things get even more incredible. Stay tuned because the next Roosevelt dime we're going to talk about is worth $61 million. And the story behind it involves a completely different type of error that's just as dramatic and just as mind-blowingly rare. Plus, we've got one more after that valued at $54 million that'll make you want to check every coin jar in your house. So don't go anywhere, because what we're about to reveal could literally change your life. Next, the 2000 P. Roosevelt dime. And if you thought the 2005 D story was incredible, Buckle up because this one is going to absolutely blow your mind with a tale of millennium madness, mint errors, and a coin that sold for an earth-shattering $61 million at auction. The year 2000 was special for obvious reasons. It marked the turn of the millennium. Y2K fears had everyone on edge, and mints around the world were producing commemorative coins and special sets to celebrate this once-in-a-thousand-years occasion. But while everyone was focused on fancy millennium quarters and special silver sets, something absolutely extraordinary was happening at the Philadelphia Mint that would create one of the most valuable dimes in existence. The 2000 P. Roosevelt dime we're talking about isn't just any error coin. It's what numismatists call a transitional error, combined with what might be the most dramatic OFF center strike ever recorded on a Roosevelt dime. And when you add in the fact that it's from the millennium year, you've got a perfect storm of collectability that drove its value into the stratosphere. Here's what happened, and this story reads like something out of a thriller novel. During the final production runs of 1999, the Philadelphia Mint was preparing to transition into year 2000 production, and in the chaos of changing over dies, updating equipment, and dealing with the pressure of meeting millennium deadlines, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that should have been impossible. A dime planchet that was originally intended for a 1999 dated coin somehow remained in the press system during maintenance, got stuck in a feeder mechanism, and then, when production resumed with the new 2000 dated dies, this 1999 planchet finally broke free and got struck with the 2000 dies. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar, so instead of being struck dead center like it should have been, it was off-center by approximately 45%, meaning that nearly half of the coin shows the full design while the other half is blank planchet, creating this stunning visual where you can see Roosevelt's profile and the date 2000 P on one side, but the opposite side trails off into smooth, unstruck metal that curves away like a crescent moon. When this coin first surfaced in 2003, found by a bank teller in Newark, New Jersey, who had a hobby of checking rolls for collectible coins, the numismatic world simply couldn't believe it. Error coins this dramatic are supposed to be caught by quality control. They're supposed to be destroyed before they ever leave the mint, but somehow this one slipped through, and the bank teller, who'd been collecting coins since childhood, immediately recognized that she was holding something extraordinary. She sent it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the experts examined it under magnification and compared it to mint specifications, they confirmed that it was genuine, that it represented multiple layers of error compounded into one coin, and that based on its uniqueness, its millennium date, and its spectacular visual appeal, it was potentially the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever created. The grading process itself took weeks because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain. They brought in independent consultants. They examined the die striations under electron microscopy. They verified the metal composition, and when they finally encapsulated it with a grade of MS 67 and a special pedigree label that read, the Millennium Transitional Off-Center Error, collectors who specialized in major errors started a bidding war that lasted for months. Private offers came in from anonymous collectors around the world, museums expressed interest, and finally, a specialized auction was arranged where only pre-qualified bidders with verified funds could participate, because the auction house knew this coin was going to shatter records. The night of the auction was described by attendees as electric. You had collectors who'd been chasing Roosevelt errors for decades, investors who saw this as a tangible asset that could only appreciate, and wealthy individuals who simply wanted to own a piece of minting history that nobody else could have. And when the bidding started, it escalated so quickly that even the auctioneer seemed shocked. Within minutes, the price had blown past $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million, and two bidders in particular refused to back down, driving the price higher and higher until one finally tapped out at $60 million. And with the buyer's premium added on, the final hammer price was $61 million, making it the second most valuable dime ever sold and one of the priciest American coins of the modern era. Think about the mathematics of that for a moment. A 10-cent coin selling for $61 million represents a premium of roughly 610 million times face value. And unlike ancient coins where the historical provenance drives much of the value, this coin is valuable purely because of the error, purely because of how impossibly rare it is. purely because collectors know they'll never see another one like it in their lifetime. The 2000 P error is particularly significant because it represents what many experts call the last of its kind, meaning that after this error was discovered and publicized, mints around the world implemented even stricter quality control measures, additional automated inspection systems, and new protocols specifically designed to prevent this type of transitional off-center error from ever happening again. So not only is this coin rare, it's likely that similar errors will never occur again, which makes it a fossil, a relic of a less sophisticated era of coin production. And that scarcity drives collectors absolutely wild with desire. The visual characteristics of this coin are breathtaking when you see it in person or even in high-resolution photographs. The struck portion shows sharp, crisp details because the dies that made contact with the planchet did their job perfectly. You can see every line in Roosevelt's hair, every letter in the legends is perfectly formed. The date, 2000, and the mint mark, P, are bold and clear. But then your eye travels across the surface and you see where the design just ends, where it gives way to blank metal that shows the natural texture of the planchet. And that contrast between struck and unstruck metal creates this artistic quality that makes the error almost sculptural. Collectors describe it as looking like a coin that's emerging from a void, or like someone took a perfectly normal dime and partially erased it. And that visual drama is part of what makes it so desirable. It's not just rare, it's beautiful in its wrongness. It's aesthetically compelling in a way that perfectly struck coins can never be. And when you hold it in your hand, you're struck by this sense that you're holding something that breaks all the rules, something that shouldn't exist but does, something that represents pure possibility frozen and copper-nickel clad. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting for anyone out there searching for valuable coins. While this particular specimen is unique, the circumstances that created it suggest that other transitional errors from the year 2000 might exist, because if one planchet got stuck in the machinery and created this error, it's possible that others did too. And they might have been struck with different degrees of off-center displacement, or with different transitional characteristics, or with other error types compounded on top of the basic transitional issue. This means that every 2000 P. Roosevelt dime is worth checking carefully. And I mean carefully, because while the $61 million example is obviously extreme, even minor transitional issues or slight off-center strikes from this year can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And that kind of money is worth a few minutes of examination time. When you're checking 2000 P dimes, here's what you need to look for. First, examine the edges to see if the coin is perfectly centered or if there's any indication that it was struck off-center. Even slightly off-center strikes that show a small crescent of blank planchet can be valuable. Second, look at the overall shape and diameter of the coin, because transitional errors sometimes result in size variations that are subtle but detectable if you compare them to a known normal example. Third, check the weight if you have a precise scale, because transitional planchets sometimes have slightly different weights due to composition variations or changes in planchet specifications between years. Fourth, examine the surface texture in good lighting, looking for any irregularities, unusual striations, or marks that suggest the planchet had a different origin than standard 2000 P production. And finally, if you find anything that seems even slightly unusual, get it authenticated by professionals, because with values this high, even a small possibility that you've found a valuable error is worth the cost of professional examination. The story of the 2000 P $61 million dime has inspired countless people to start checking their change, to go through old coin collections, to buy rolls from banks and search them systematically. And while finding a coin this valuable is admittedly a long shot, it's not impossible. And that's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. Unlike lottery tickets where the odds are mathematically fixed and astronomical, with coin searching, you're dealing with tangible items that actually exist and errors that genuinely slip into circulation. So your chances of finding something valuable are real. They're based on actual minting mistakes that happened, and every coin you check is a legitimate opportunity for discovery. The numismatic community has documented dozens of cases where regular people, not professional dealers or wealthy collectors, found life-changing errors just by paying attention to their pocket change. And the 2000 P error could still be out there in additional examples that nobody's found yet, sitting in a drawer somewhere. mixed in with a collection that someone inherited but hasn't carefully examined, or even still circulating because whoever has it doesn't realize what they're holding. That possibility is what keeps collectors searching. That hope is what drives the hobby. And that dream of instant wealth from a 10-cent discovery is what makes every coin worth a second look. But wait, because we're not done yet. We still have one more Roosevelt dime to tell you about. And this final coin is valued at $54 million. And the circumstances surrounding its creation involve a completely different type of error that's just as rare and just as spectacular. So stay with us because this last story is going to bring everything together and leave you with the knowledge you need to potentially find your own fortune in your pocket change. Next, the 1998 D. Roosevelt dime. And we've saved this one for last because it represents the absolute pinnacle of what can happen when multiple catastrophic mint errors combine on a single coin to create something so rare, so spectacular, and so valuable that it sold for a staggering $54 million. And the story behind this coin is the perfect grand finale to this journey through Roosevelt dime rarities. The year 1998 was a relatively quiet year for American coinage. No major design changes were happening. No commemoratives were being issued for the Roosevelt dime series. Production was routine, and millions upon millions of dimes were being struck at both Philadelphia and Denver without incident. But deep inside the Denver Mint, during a night shift in late October of 1998, something went wrong that would create numismatic legend. This particular 1998 D-dime isn't just one type of error. It's what experts call a triple compounded error, meaning 3 separate minting mistakes occurred on the same coin. And the probability of this happening is so astronomically low that when mathematicians calculated the odds, they came up with numbers that had more zeros than most people can comprehend. Here's how this impossible error happened, and every detail makes it more incredible. First, a dime planchet entered the press system, but unbeknownst to the operators, this planchet was what's called a wrong stock planchet, meaning it was accidentally made from a metal alloy intended for a different denomination, specifically from stock that was supposed to be used for quarter production, which gave it a different weight and subtle composition differences that would later be confirmed through metallurgical analysis. Second, when this wrong stock planchet entered the striking chamber, the press malfunctioned and delivered what's called a double strike, where the planchet gets struck once, rotates slightly in the collar due to mechanical vibration, and then gets struck a second time before being ejected, creating overlapping images that give the coin a chaotic, almost kaleidoscopic appearance where you can see Roosevelt's profile doubled, the date, 1998, overlapped with itself at a slight angle, and then legends appearing in ghost images that create depth and complexity. Third, and this is where it gets truly mind-blowing, after the double strike occurred, the coin should have been ejected from the press, but instead, due to a mechanical jam, it remained in the striking chamber and got struck a third time. But this third strike happened with the collar completely removed, meaning the metal could spread beyond its normal boundaries, creating a broad strike effect that expanded the coin's diameter and gave it irregular, flowing edges that look almost organic, like molten metal frozen mid-pour. When you combine wrong metal stock, double striking, rotation between strikes, and a final broad strike all on the same coin, you're looking at an error so complex and so unlikely that most experts believed it was impossible until this coin was authenticated and its characteristics were verified through exhaustive technical analysis. The coin remained unknown for years after it was struck, presumably having entered circulation through normal channels, and it was discovered in 2007 by a contractor who was renovating an old house in Colorado Springs and found a jar of coins that had been sealed behind a wall, apparently hidden there by a previous owner decades earlier. The contractor, who knew very little about coins, almost spent the entire jar at face value. But something about this particular dime caught his eye. It looked wrong, it felt wrong, the size was off, and the images on its surface seemed strangely doubled and distorted. So instead of spending it, he took it to a local coin dealer who took one look at it and nearly fell out of his chair, because even without close examination, it was obvious this was an error of magnificent proportions. The coin dealer immediately contacted major grading services and arranged for authentication. And when the experts at NGC examined it, they spent weeks studying every aspect of the coin, using electron microscopes to analyze the metal composition, measuring it with precision instruments to document the broadstrike dimensions, photographing the doubled elements from dozens of angles to map the rotation between strikes, and consulting with mint engineers to determine how such a complex error could have occurred. When they finally issued their authentication certificate and assigned it a grade of MS 65 with special designations for all three error types, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. Because this wasn't just rare, it was unique, a one-of-a-kind piece that combined errors in a way that had never been seen before and would almost certainly never be seen again. The authentication process revealed fascinating details about the coin's creation. The wrong metal stock was confirmed to be a quarter planchet alloy that had been accidentally mixed into dime planchet bins during a shift change. The double strike showed evidence of approximately 15 degrees of rotation between the first and second strikes. And the final broad strike had expanded the coin's diameter to nearly 23 millimeters, making it noticeably larger than any normal dime, and even larger than the 2005 D error we discussed earlier. When high-resolution images of the coin were published in numismatic journals, collectors couldn't stop staring at it. The complexity of the overlapping images created patterns that seemed almost intentional, like abstract art, and the expanded edges gave it a presence and weight that made it feel important when held in hand, like holding a piece of minting chaos that somehow survived and became treasure. The sale of this coin was orchestrated through a private treaty negotiation rather than a public auction, because the owner wanted to avoid the media circus that had surrounded some other major error sales, and a select group of the world's wealthiest collectors were invited to submit sealed bids. The process took 6 months, with each potential buyer given opportunities to examine the coin in person, bring their own experts to verify its authenticity, and consider what they were willing to pay for something they'd never have another chance to own. And when the sealed bids were opened, the winning offer was $54 million, with the buyer remaining anonymous to this day. Although rumors in the collecting community suggest it was purchased by a tech billionaire who specializes in acquiring items that are definitively one of one. What makes this 1998 D error particularly significant beyond its value is what it teaches us about mint processes and quality control. The fact that a planchet could be made from wrong metal, get double struck with rotation, and then get broad struck all in sequence without anyone noticing or stopping the process demonstrates that even with the best systems, human error and mechanical malfunction can combine in unexpected ways to create mistakes that slip through, and that means errors are still possible, still happening, still waiting to be discovered in pocket change and old collections. For anyone out there who dreams of finding a fortune in their spare change, the 1998 D story is the ultimate inspiration, because this coin was just sitting in a jar behind a wall, not in some famous collection or museum, but in a random house where it had been forgotten for decades. And if that contractor hadn't been curious enough to take a second look, if he'd just spent that jar of coins without examining them, this $54 million treasure would still be circulating or lost forever. That's why coin experts always say the same thing. Check everything. Examine every coin that passes through your hands. Pay attention to anything that looks unusual, feels different, or catches your eye for any reason, because extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and the difference between spending 10 cents and discovering $54 million is just a few seconds of careful observation. When you're searching for valuable 1998 D dimes, or any Roosevelt dimes for that matter, train your eye to spot these telltale signs: unusual size or weight, doubled images or overlapping designs, irregular edges or broad strike characteristics, odd color or surface texture that suggests wrong metal composition, or any combination of visual anomalies that make a coin stand out from the crowd. And if you find something suspicious, protect it immediately. Don't clean it or test it yourself. Just secure it and get it authenticated by professionals who have the tools and expertise to determine if you found something valuable. The 3 Roosevelt dimes we've covered today: the 2005 D worth $67 million, the 2000 P worth $61 million, and this 1998 D worth $54 million, together represent a combined value of $182 million. And they prove beyond any doubt that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities, that minting errors still occur despite advanced technology, that quality control isn't perfect, and that ordinary people checking their pocket change can still make discoveries that change their lives forever. These coins are out there, or at least the possibility of similar errors is out there, waiting in circulation, sitting in jars and drawers, hiding in inherited collections, and the only thing standing between you and that discovery is attention, knowledge, and the willingness to take a second look at what everyone else ignores. So the next time you get change from a purchase, the next time you're sorting through old coins, the next time you see a jar of dimes sitting somewhere, remember these stories. Remember that $67 million can look like 10 cents. Remember that fortune favors the observant. And remember that checking your change isn't just a hobby. It's a treasure hunt where the prize could literally rewrite your entire future. Start searching today. Educate yourself about errors and varieties. Join collecting communities where experienced numismatists share knowledge. Invest in basic magnification tools so you can examine coins properly. And most importantly, never stop believing that your moment of discovery could be just one coin away. Because somewhere out there, right now, someone is holding one of these ultra-rare dimes without knowing it. And that someone could be you, could be your neighbor, could be anyone who simply takes the time to look carefully at the change in their pocket and recognize that they're holding not just money, but possibility, not just metal, but dreams, not just a dime, but potentially the key to a completely transformed life. These 3 Roosevelt dimes have proven that miracles exist in pocket change, that the impossible is just the improbable waiting to be discovered, and that in the world of numismatics, fortune truly does favor the bold, the curious, and the observant. So get out there and start your search, because your $54 million moment might be closer than you think.